Have you always dreamed of having your own fresh citrus that you could pick in your backyard, but you think it's just not possible because it's too cold where you live? Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. We have been lied to. Citrus is way more cold hardy than we have been led to believe. In fact, most people in the United States can be growing citrus trees in ground in their own yard. The only thing stopping us is our perception. That's why on today's video, I'm going to show you 12 insanely cold hardy citrus trees that you can grow in ground in places with freezing cold winters. These aren't strange hybrids or seedy fruits you won't want to eat. These are top quality fruits that everyone will enjoy.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
I live on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, Zone 8B, just outside of the Wilmington area. And when I moved here in 2017, nobody knew anything about growing citrus. This area was thought to be too cold. I mean, nobody really thinks North Carolina is citrus country, right? Yet I am still growing 11 different varieties of citrus in ground. And I've been doing this for 7 or 8 years now, soon to be 12. I'm going to add another one in ground soon. And the good news is every single one of these citrus varieties grows with ease. They've never suffered any kind of cold damage, even in the worst of my winters. So I know anybody in Zone 8 or warmer can grow all of these pretty easily. In fact, if you live in Zone 7, a lot of these can be grown in ground. But just to be clear, you should protect your citrus trees on the coldest nights of the year. I usually get about 5 to 10 nights a year where it's going to be in the 20s or colder, and I do protect them on those really cold evenings. The good news is this is very easy to do. I use things like pickle barrels and incandescent outdoor rated C9 Christmas lights in order to keep them warm. Back here, all I use are these 60-gallon pickle barrels for warmth. They absorb heat during the day, and then it radiates the heat back out at night. And then I cover them with a row cover. This row cover can stay on for days or weeks at a time if it's going to be prolonged cold. It's all very easy to do. I'll link to a video both above and down in the video description that will give you a full tutorial on how to do this. It's really simple. It's not a lot of work. And if you do this just a few nights a year, it will pay huge dividends with a massive citrus harvest. Cold hardy citrus tree number 1 is the crown jewel of my entire yard, and that is the Owari Satsuma. This is what I think is the gold standard in incredibly cold hardy citrus, and it is the first citrus tree that I purchased and put in ground here. This tree is going on 8 years old, and it gives me bumper crops of Satsumas every single year. This year it's having a bit of an off year because we had a huge snowstorm last year, huge for our area, and it really kind of gave the citrus a poor bloom, but normally this thing is absolutely loaded and it gives me 100 to 200 pounds of fruit every single year. Satsumas, also known as mandarin oranges, are true oranges, and they are the most cold hardy of the oranges. This Owari Satsuma can tolerate temperatures briefly all the way down to about 12 degrees Fahrenheit once the tree gets large enough and is mature. In fact, in all the years I've had this in ground, it has never taken any cold damage at all, not even tip burn, no matter how cold or snowy it's gotten, just with basic protection. And the thing about the fruits are, they're absolutely delicious. They are zipper skinned. Most fruits tend to be relatively seedless or only have maybe 1 or 2 seeds, and the fruit quality is absolutely incredible. Now, there are some new varieties of Satsumas out there that claim to be very cold hardy, like Arctic Frost, but Owari is a very old variety. The fruit quality is going to be superior, and this is a thornless tree, unlike Arctic Frost. So I would say don't give in to the new marketing of some of these new citrus varieties. This is the gold standard of cold hardy citrus right here, and it is the #1 citrus tree I'd recommend anyone give a shot growing if you live in Zone 8A or warmer, maybe if you live in a very mild 7B with a protected microclimate. Cold hardy citrus tree number 2 is the Meyer lemon, and this is the most cold hardy of the lemons if you're looking to grow a lemon in ground. Now, the thing about the Meyer lemon is that it isn't actually a true lemon. It is actually a hybrid. It is a cross between a lemon and a Satsuma. However, it approximates a lemon. It's just a really juicy, low acid lemon, and in my opinion, it's way better tasting than a true lemon. So you actually get all of the benefits of a Satsuma's lineage in the cold hardiness, but without any of the compromises in true lemon flavor. And the wonderful thing about the Meyer lemon is it is a natural dwarf. All of the different varieties of citrus that I'm growing in my yard are grafted onto trifoliate rootstock because trifoliate rootstock dwarfs the trees and it imparts some cold hardiness because your trifoliate orange is actually a deciduous citrus, so it puts them in semi-dormancy during really cold spells in the winter, which protects them. But because the Meyer lemon is a natural dwarf, this is the only rooted cutting, non-grafted tree that I'm growing. And I specifically picked a rooted cutting for this tree because it's the least cold hardy of the citrus that I'm growing in ground. This is cold hardy to something like 18 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So my thought was, in case this tree was ever killed down to the ground, if it resprouts from the rootstock, well, it's going to come back as the true Meyer lemon because it's a rooted cutting. I won't get a rootstock that comes back. And because it's a natural dwarf, I knew I'd be able to plant it up against the warm wall, south-facing wall of my house for a little bit of cold protection because it's a windbreak to the north wind and your south wall of your house is going to radiate the heat of the sun back all day. Well, guess what? Turns out this wasn't really necessary, at least so far, because this has been in ground for 6 winters now. Once again, it has never taken any kind of cold damage at all with my cold protection methods. What is notable about the Meyer lemon is how insanely productive it is. Every year, this thing is absolutely loaded up with insane amounts of lemons. Like I said, we had a bad winter last year, so the tree stayed covered for an entire month, and I think that negatively impacted the bloom. So I only have about 2 dozen fruits on this tree this year. Usually there's about 100 to 150 or so lemons, but that's okay. It's going to rebound next year and have an absolutely insane bloom. But one thing I want you to understand about the Meyer lemon is sometimes you've heard things about a Meyer lemon versus an improved Meyer lemon. All of the Meyer lemons sold in the United States are all the improved strain. Generations ago, there was a disease that killed off the original Meyer lemon, and the improved variety was immune to that. So when you buy a Meyer lemon, you're actually getting an improved Meyer lemon. If you want to try growing a lemon tree in ground, I suggest you give this one a try. It's been an absolute joy to grow. Cold hardy citrus tree number 3 is a fairly new addition to my yard, and that is the sugar bell. Believe it or not, this sugar bell tree is only 3 years old, and I just pruned it and rounded it. It hasn't quite fruited for me yet, other than about a half a dozen fruits or so, because it's so young, but I am so incredibly impressed with this tree. Now, this sugar bell is actually a mandarin hybrid, so it does have mandarin orange lineage in it, so for that reason, it is very cold hardy. But to me, this kind of tastes more like a cross between a Satsuma and a navel orange. So if you're not into the intense sweetness of a Satsuma, this one is a little bit more acidic, and it has more like an orange skin than the zipper skin that you find in a Satsuma. So this is a great way that if you live in a really cold climate, you can add more citrus diversity to your yard. What makes this citrus tree so important is it is one of the few HLB resistant citrus trees. This is resistant to citrus greening. So if you live in Florida or in an area where citrus greening is a problem, this is one of the few trees that will actually grow very well. And grow well it does. Once again, this has never taken any kind of cold damage, even despite the fact this is on the north side of my house where it gets a lot less cold protection and it takes the full brunt of the north wind. It is just an absolutely beautiful tree. I approximate that this can take anywhere from around 15 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit briefly once it becomes mature. So if you're looking for a non-Satsuma that is extremely cold hardy, or you need something that's resistant to citrus greening disease, definitely give this one a try. Cold hardy citrus tree number 4 is the Brown Select Satsuma, and that is what you see right here. This tree has been in ground for, I think, going on about 4 years now, and it has been a stellar performer in terms of cold tolerance. Now, when I tasted the fruit of my Owari Satsuma 5 or 6 years ago, I knew that I had to be on the lookout for another Satsuma tree, but I didn't want to plant another Owari because it wouldn't help me if I had 2 orange trees ripening their crop at the same time. The thing that makes Brown Select so incredible is it is about 2 to 3 weeks earlier than owari, while still having the same incredible quality fruit and same cold tolerance of about 12 degrees Fahrenheit once it is a fully mature, hardened off tree. Now, my owari satsuma tends to ripen a little bit late, usually anywhere from around the middle of December to Christmas. That is when the fruit starts tasting the best. But this brown select is 2 to 3 weeks earlier. It will start ripening its fruit usually around Thanksgiving, and it will taste very good around that time frame. So by planting a brown select, that allows me to get a longer harvest window of about another month or so. So I can have bumper crops of citrus that are ripening at different times to extend my satsuma season. Now, where I live in Zone 8B, I'm able to ripen both owari and brown select very well. If you live in a significantly cooler zone than I do, like a Zone 8A, or you live in a 7B and you want to try your citrus in ground, well, that might really delay your owari fruit into maybe January. So brown select is a great option if you live in a cooler zone with shorter summers and longer winters than I have, to give a try, because it exhibits the same level of cold hardiness, the same incredible fruit, but having it ripen earlier for you, that gives you a big advantage, so you can pick the fruit before the really hard freezes of January comes. Cold hardy citrus trees 5 and 6 are your Nagami kumquat and your Meiwa kumquat. Now, the interesting thing about the kumquat is they are probably the most cold hardy of the citrus aside from your satsumas. Your kumquats can tolerate temperatures down to about 12 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. So next to my satsumas, this is probably the most cold hardy citrus tree in my yard and garden. The issue with kumquats is they are extremely dwarfing. Believe it or not, this tree is 4 years old, and this is as big as it is. And one of the reasons why is this likes to load up with fruit twice a year. It bears on a more ever-bearing schedule. So when you get those twice-a-year blooms and fruit production, it tends to really stall the growth. I guess I probably could have picked the fruit off of it and let it devote more energy into top growth, but I just love this fruit so much I couldn't find it in my heart to do it. Now, the one I'm growing is the Meiwa kumquat, not the Nagami. And that's because a kumquat is a very interesting thing, because you actually eat the skin. You pop the whole fruit into your mouth, kind of like a grape, except you spit out the seed. And no matter what variety of kumquat you grow, the skin itself is very sweet. However, your Nagami kumquats have a very sour interior, so you get a sweet skin and a sour interior, but your Meiwa kumquats are purely sweet. They have a sweet skin and a sweet interior, and that is the one that I really love. I love the Meiwa. So if you like the sour kumquats, get yourself a Nagami. If you like yourself the sweet kumquats, get yourself a Meiwa, or you can get them both and have the best of both worlds, since the trees are so small. That is up to you, but I just love coming out here when they're ripe and you just pop them into your mouth like orange candy. They are truly unique and delicious. Cold hardy citrus tree number 7 is the Cara Cara Red Navel Orange, and growing this tree has been quite the learning experience. That's because when I initially did my research into navel oranges, I was told by the internet that a navel orange was only hardy until the mid to upper 20s. Now I can confidently say that is nonsense. Now, I'm not personally a big fan of the traditional Washington navel orange. I don't really care for them at all, and I never purchase them. However, I do love the Cara Cara. I think the red navel oranges are absolutely fantastic, maybe even rivaling that of the best satsuma. So I knew I wanted to try one in ground, and I took a gamble and planted this in ground at least 4 winters ago. And what's interesting is the very first winter that this orange tree was in ground, when it was a small, recently grafted tree, that is when I recorded my coldest ever annual minimum in the 7 or 8 years I've lived on this property, and that was 14 degrees Fahrenheit. And under cover, with the frost blanket and this water barrel, giving it protection from the radiating heat, I recorded 24 degrees under the cover. So while the cover and the overhead tree canopy did stop frost from forming on the leaves, this got frozen through to 24 degrees when it was just a little tiny tree, and it caused almost no damage at all. I think I had a little bit of tip burn in the very front where it was the furthest away from the protection of the water barrel, which I easily pruned off. And since then, it has never suffered any kind of cold damage at all, and since it had an off-fruiting year this year, I gave it a really nice shaping right here, and I expect this to come back big next year. So if you think you can't grow a navel orange, I'm extremely confident that this can take at least 20 degrees Fahrenheit if you put a cover over it to give it a little bit of frost protection and the tree is larger and more mature. And I expect it to get even more cold hardy as it grows bigger and bigger. Cold hardy citrus tree number 8 is the Morrow Blood Orange, and despite the fact that I've had this tree for 8 years, it's only been in ground for a year and a half, and that's because I was lied to. Once again, I was told that my climate was far too cold to grow a blood orange in ground. I needed a minimum zone 9. So I grew it in a pot for 5 or 6 years where it performed very well. However, I neglected to root prune it and change out the mix, and it started to get root rot. So 2 years ago, I ripped it out of the pot because the tree was dying back, and I planted it in ground here, and I crossed my fingers and I hoped for the best. And while it did die back, the tree has come back swinging, and it's actually producing a cluster of fruit, its first cluster of fruit since I saved it and put it back in ground. And the great news is we had the worst winter we'd ever had since I moved here in North Carolina last year, and the tree sailed through the winter completely unharmed. In fact, the blood orange is actually notable to be more cold hardy than a navel orange, and I know from 4 years of growing that navel orange in ground that it's plenty warm here to do it with limited protection. Guess what? The blood orange has been even easier to grow, and I foresee great things for this plant. It's such a unique fruit with the blood red raspberry color and raspberry blackberry flavor. Just something really interesting and unique to grow. So if you want to really give yourself a showpiece piece of citrus to grow in your yard, try growing a Morrow Blood Orange. It's really spectacular. I estimate this blood orange would be hardy till about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe even to the upper teens once it gets established. So with a little bit of cold protection, keeping the hard frost off the leaves, I expect big things for many years out of this beautiful tree. Cold hardy citrus number 9 is one of the newest citrus additions to my yard, and that is the Eustace Limequat. Now, if you've never heard of a limequat before, that's because it is a hybrid between a lime and a kumquat, so it's not something that you're going to find commercially at a standard grocery store. However, this was hybridized to fill a void. There are no truly cold hardy true lime, so I've never really been able to grow a true lime here in Zone 8 North Carolina. I've been growing this key lime tree in this pot for about 4 years now, and I absolutely love the fruit, but unfortunately your key lime is one of your more frost-tender varieties of citrus, so I can't plant it in ground here with any kind of reliability. It's just not cold hardy enough, and I wanted some kind of tree that would approximate the fruit, but have the cold hardiness that would allow me to plant it in ground, because growing potted citrus, well, they just don't give you the yield potential of an in-ground citrus tree. While I absolutely love the flavor of the fruit in my potted key lime, it's just too cold here in Zone 8 to reliably plant that in ground. I don't think it would do very well. So I got this Eustace Limequat as a bridge because it gets the cold hardy genetics of the kumquat, but it has the flavor of the lime. For whatever reason, the genetics of this fruit approximates that of a key lime. So this is supposed to be basically a blindfolded dead ringer to a key lime, but it has the cold resistance of the kumquat built into the genetics. Now, this is not going to be as cold hardy as a pure kumquat. This is supposed to be cold hardy to something like 20 degrees Fahrenheit, but I'm already really optimistic about this number because I put this in ground last summer and it went through the really horrible winter we had last year after being in ground for just a couple of months next to this water barrel with a frost cloth, and it slid through that cold, no problem, without any kind of notable cold damage. So it's already doubled in size. It's put on its first few fruits. I'm really excited to give this a try. I think this is going to be the perfect lime substitute, and if I blindfold you, you probably won't even know it's not a true lime. Cold hardy citrus tree number 10 is the Excalibur Red Lime, and this is the newest addition for citrus trees planted in ground on my property. This was only planted about 3 months ago, and it's going to go through its very first winter. You can see it's small, but it's already put on a tremendous amount of growth since I planted it about 3 months ago. Now, I purchased an Excalibur Red Lime about 8 years ago, but 8 years ago there was almost no information about the Excalibur Red Lime. So I put it in a pot, and it stayed in that pot for 5 or 6 years until, just like my blood orange, one really cold, damp winter, it got root rot, I guess because I failed to change the mix in that 5-year period, and it started to die back. Now, I planted that tree in ground just like I did my blood orange, but unfortunately, the Excalibur Red Lime died, and I had to go out and buy a new one. So this time I just said, you know what, forget it. I'm planting it right in the ground, and we will see how it does. Now, the Excalibur Red Lime is another one of those very interesting citrus hybrids. It's a cross between a lime and a kumquat. But whereas that Eustace limequat that I just showed you, the fruit is more like a lime, this fruit is actually more like a kumquat than a lime. Now, it's the size of a lime, it's very large, however, it is orange inside and out, and it has an extremely sweet edible skin. I actually love the taste of the skin more than the juice from the fruit inside. It's almost like candied orange peel. It's absolutely delicious. So I'm really hoping that this tree sails through its first winter. I'm extremely confident it will, because we just went through 2 freezes with a frost blanket and these incandescent mini lights on it, and it's absolutely fine. So I have high hopes for this tree. I have some experience with it, and it's a really unique, interesting citrus hybrid. Cold hardy citrus tree number 11 is the Ichang lemon. Some also call it the Ikang lemon. The reason why I purchased the Ichang lemon was for one reason, and for one reason only. It is supposed to be an absurdly cold hardy lemon hybrid, far more cold hardy than the Meyer lemon, and I wanted to see if I could grow a lemon-like hybrid unprotected in ground here in Zone 8. And this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I purchased this tree that you see right here, and I ordered it online, and when I received it in the mail, I noticed something was missing from the tree, a graft line. So I emailed the seller and I asked, hey, is the tree you sold me a grafted tree? And they said, no, it's actually seed grown. So I thought to myself, oh no, seed grown citrus, they're going to take 7 to 10 years to reach sexual maturity. It's going to be forever before I get fruit off of this tree. So I decided to throw it to the wolves. Now, luckily, I made a terrible mistake in my yard, and I planted a trifoliate orange tree in ground, which was a thorny mess, a disaster. So I actually cut that tree to the ground, I stumped it, and I grafted on 2 pieces of wood of this Ichang lemon, and both of the grafts took. And that is the tree that you see right here. Well, this has been growing in ground in my yard for several years, and because I don't really care about the tree, I have never offered it any source of protection at all. So I know for a fact that this tree right here can grow unprotected in Zone 8, at least Zone 8B, with no issue at all. Even through 5 nights in the teens, it got frozen solid with ice and snow last winter. No damage to this thing at all. So if you want to take a risk and you want to plant some super cold hardy citrus in ground, maybe get the Ichang lemon. Just make sure your tree is grafted so you get fruit within a year or 2, and you don't have to wait a decade before you see any blooms. And cold hardy citrus variety number 12 is the only variety of citrus I'm featuring in this video that I have not yet planted in my yard, and that is Yutzu. Yutzu is the last variety of citrus that I intend on planting in my yard, because I already have so many, but Who knows with me, maybe I'll go back on my word and plant a few more. But the reason why I want to grow Yutsu is it is notable for being one of the most cold-hardy, quality varieties of citrus out there. Yutsu is extremely popular in Asian cooking, particularly Japanese cooking. If you have ever had ponzu sauce, the citrus flavor in ponzu is Yutsu. And Yutsu, it kind of looks like a deformed lemon. It's very funny looking. It's a culinary delight. It's a very high-end fruit that is highly sought after, and it is prized for its juice. But what makes it so interesting is it is actually cold hardy to 0 degrees once it is mature. In fact, it is a deciduous citrus tree, so it is known to lose some of its leaves in the cold. It's not completely evergreen, which is why it's so darn cold hardy. In fact, some people have actually claimed that their Yutsu has come back from below 0 temperatures. Now, don't get me wrong, expect massive damage and dieback unprotected at those temperatures, but the point is, if you give this tree a little bit of protection, Zone 7A growing is truly possible. Maybe even 6B if you go the extra mile and you do the incandescent lights and the water barrels, and you're really careful about protecting them. You give it, you make sure it's grafted onto trifoliate, so it's dwarfing, and you plant it up against the south wall of your house. You can do a ton with Yutsu. So the whole reason why I want to get myself a Yutsu tree is I would like to have another 0 maintenance citrus tree, kind of like that Ichang lemon, where I can just put it in ground, maybe protect it a year or two to get it established, but then set it and forget it and pretend it's just like any other tree and not have to offer it any cold protection at all. That is something that I'm really looking for, a truly 0 maintenance citrus tree aside from annual pruning and harvesting. And if there's any tree where we have a really good shot of making that possible, it's going to be Yutsu. But now that I've showed you all of these incredible varieties of cold hardy citrus, where do you get them? Well, all of my grafted cold hardy citrus trees come from one source. They're all from Mackenzie Farms in Scranton, South Carolina. I've had a relationship with Stan Mackenzie for going back a decade now. He's absolutely incredible. He has the furthest north in-ground citrus nursery that actually produces fruit on the entire East Coast, and he's one of the biggest collectors of cold hardy citrus in the entire United States. Now, Stan's a bit old school, so if you want to order citrus from him, I strongly recommend you call him. He's on Google Maps. You can call him at this number right here, or if you're local, you can take a drive to his nursery. I've gone there many times. I absolutely love paying him a visit. So I strongly recommend that you give Stan a call for any of these varieties, and he will ship you what you need. Now, that being said, if you live in a citrus quarantine state where you cannot have citrus shipped into the state. Let's say you live in Florida. A really good place that you can buy is Brightleaf. Brightleaf will sell inside Florida because they are a Florida citrus nursery. Same thing with Just Fruits and Exotics. They are also a Florida citrus nursery, so you can buy citrus inside the state. Now, let's say you live in Texas. Well, the only citrus place that I know in Texas that has a very wide selection that you can order online is Bob Wells Nursery. You can give them a shot if you want to order citrus within the state of Texas. If you live in Arizona, which is a citrus quarantine state, you can look at Seamus O'Leary's nursery in Phoenix. I know he sells a lot of citrus. And if you live in Georgia, you can also go to Georgia Grown Citrus. They will ship citrus within the state of Georgia. So if you live in one of those quarantine zones and you can't order from Stan, consider giving those places a look. I know there was a lot of information in this video, but if you'd like to see me make more detailed videos about any of these specific varieties, please let me know down in the comments. So if you live in Zone 7 or warmer, do not let anyone tell you that you can't be growing citrus in ground. You can. Yes, it will take a little bit of work. Yes, you will want to select proper microclimates. Yes, you'll want to get your trees grafted onto trifoliate rootstock and prune them annually to keep them small. And yes, you will want to protect them, especially through the first few winters to get them established. But if you put in that bit of work, you will be rewarded with the best tasting citrus of your life. Anytime anybody walks into my yard, especially in the winter, and they see my citrus trees, they are absolutely floored floored. And believe it or not, they're one of the easiest things I have that grow in my entire yard, because although they do take some work in the winter to keep them protected, they're no maintenance throughout the rest of the year. They get virtually no pests aside from leaf miner, which you just easily prune off in the winter. They get no diseases at all because we don't have citrus greening here in the Carolinas. They are just a delight to grow. So if you want something that's just a showstopper, something you can be really proud of and absolutely delicious, try giving citrus a try. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring the notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. For any of the products that I use to take care of my citrus, like fertilizers, pruning tools, plant jackets, things like that, I'll link to them down in the video description for your convenience. For everything else I use in real life in my yard and garden, that's all linked in my Amazon storefront. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, you'll see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, please check out my website, themillennialgardener.com, for all things gardening and for custom merch if you want to support my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Well, as if life couldn't get any better for Senor Dale, who just had the greatest one-week dog vacation of all time, he gets to wake up to Costco Chicken Day. You see, we ate our entire refrigerator bare before we left for our vacation, so nothing would go spoiled and we wouldn't waste any food. So when we came home, we had nothing in the fridge, and it seemed like a great idea to get a couple of rotisserie chickens to make life easy for the next couple of days. And Dale is all about it because he gets to taste test. Buddy, tell us if it's safe. Is that good? Oh, he's not sure. He has to see. He needs another taste. He needs to make sure that this is safe to eat. He couldn't tell by the first bite. Now, be gentle. Oh, that's so gentle, Dale. That's so good. We have him all decked out in a super snazzy Christmas tree sweater because it's a little bit cold outside, and he is excited for the holidays. One more, Dale. You've had so many treats this week. This is all you're getting for the rest of the day until dinner time. All right, buddy. Thank you for making an appearance.